The phrase missing girls describes the excess mortality of girls that results from gender discriminatory practices ranging from prenatal sex selection to neglect during infancy and early childhood. Every year, the world has over 2 million missing girls under the age of 5. Of those, 1.5 million are missing at birth as a result of prenatal sex selection. Excess mortality of girls has been a problem for centuries, but in recent decades, the problem has increased noticeably, with a particularly dramatic increase in the number of girls missing at birth. This rise results from a combination of 3 factors. First, son preference, deriving from cultural norms that create incentives for parents to value sons over daughters. Declining fertility, because as parents have fewer children, they have fewer chances to have a son. And thirdly, technologies that allow for sex determination during pregnancy have become more sophisticated, cheaper, and more widely available, making it easier for parents to exercise their preference for sons. Of these 3 factors, son preference is the root of the problem. Societies that do not have son preference do not practice sex selection, even if they have low fertility and access to sex selection technology. Addressing son preference is the most effective way to stop sex selection and gender discrimination more broadly. Son preference is widely prevalent in agrarian societies in which familial roles lead sons to be valued more than daughters. Sons are expected to inherit and work the family land and care for their aged parents, whereas daughters typically move away from the home and can be of less use to parents. Son preference is also found in the developed world historically, and there are some vestiges today. For example, a study found that in Germany in the early 19th century, girls born into farming families which already had girls had a higher probability of dying in early childhood. And studies in the United States today find a higher likelihood of divorce among couples who do not have a son. But the level of discrimination in favor of sons has risen sharply in recent years in some countries. This can be seen in higher than expected ratios of boys to girls. The United Nations estimates that globally there is an average of 105 boys to every 100 girls under the age of 5. However, where son preference is strong and sex selection is widespread, sex ratios become imbalanced. China and parts of India have had child sex ratios well above the normal range for decades, but the problem is also found in countries in Eastern Europe and in South Central Asia. Fortunately, such a rise in discrimination is not irreversible. Sex ratios in China and South Korea rose sharply during the 1980s and early 1990s. But since then, sex ratios at birth in South Korea have dropped quickly to normal levels, while continuing to rise in China. So what happened in South Korea? Since the 1960s, within a single generation, Korea was transformed from an agrarian to an industrialized urban society. With a rapid shift from farming to industrial occupations, people could save for their old age, no longer dependent on sons to work the farmland and support their parents. And with a massive shift of population from rural to urban areas, the chances of sons or daughters living in the same city as their parents became more equal, meaning that girls could also give their old parents physical and emotional support. South Korea is a relatively small and homogeneous country, so new social norms could spread quickly. But countries like China and India are large and heterogeneous, so change doesn't spread as fast. These countries need to rely on other ways of reducing son preference. Many types of policies have been tried, including direct and indirect approaches. One direct approach is to ban the use of sex selection technology. However, this has been tried with mixed success and some unanticipated negative consequences, including the risk of criminalizing women and making it difficult for women to access comprehensive health care. Another direct approach is providing monetary incentives to parents to raise daughters. There is some limited and mixed evidence that the approach is effective. Indirect approaches include, firstly, broad efforts to increase gender equity in inheriting property, in the workplace, and in political representation. These efforts help to empower women, indirectly increasing their ability to help their parents. They also help create role models for other women to follow. A more subtle approach to reducing son preference is to use advocacy to encourage parents to believe that girls are as valuable as boys. This is also helped by broader efforts to increase gender equity, so women are more able to help their parents. Much advocacy has been done in East and South Asia and seems to have impact, especially when carried out through the media. There have been a number of efforts made through the media, especially television, to spread the idea that girls are as valuable as boys, and results have been promising. Merely being exposed to media can have an impact. For example, an evaluation found that access to cable TV in India sharply reduced the proportion of women who said that they wanted their next child to be a boy. Atmaja, a soap opera that aired for several seasons in India and focused on son preference and sex selection, resonated with the target audience and showed positive changes in attitudes. Based on experiences thus far, broad and indirect approaches appear to be more effective and efficient to encourage parents to value girls. While direct efforts to limit access to medical technology or offer parents incentives to raise girls are often costly and work-intensive and show mixed results, indirect approaches cost relatively little and have shown encouraging results. Most importantly, the only lasting way of reducing son preference and discrimination against girls is to increase opportunities for women and to use advocacy to show that girls are as valuable as boys.